of the television show Survivor. Anybody else watch Survivor? A few of we strange souls. And I watch to be entertained, but I also watch to see what people who have no known claim or connection with faith of the church, how they act in their lives during times of stress. I mean, let's face it, I see mostly church people in times of stress, and well, people outside of my natural environment seem to behave differently. The survivors are always told by the host, Jeff Probst, to expect the unexpected. And it is the unexpected that causes the players to reveal their grace, their calm, and their social abilities, or their anxiety, their lack of social abilities, and their complete lack of grace. Now, take any of us out of our regular routines, and we all struggle to meet life with grace and calm, because it is our routines that prevent stress. Whether we know it or not, we all have a morning routine. Things that we do automatically, one after another. Something interrupts that, and most of us are grouchy for quite some time. In fact, take me out of my routine and I won't remember what comes next. Because it is the routine that allows us to get everything done without really having to think about it too much. And take us out of our routines, and most of us struggle. Well, Jesus and his family were completely out of their routine as they attended a wedding in Cana in the region of Galilee. In fact, everyone present was out of their routine, including the hosts, the bride, and the groom, and their servants. As long as everything went according to plan, everyone knew how to behave. Everyone could relax and enjoy some time away from the ordinary. But then the unexpected occurred. After the first 2 days of a week-long celebration, the host ran out of wine. And that, friends, was a social disaster on the order of today a bride or a groom simply not showing up for the wedding. It was bad. Now, weddings in the first century took place in a time when most people really never had time off except for the Sabbath, for those who could afford to actually observe the Sabbath. And weddings were an opportunity to just sit down at a banquet where things that no one usually could afford to eat were served. If you have ever seen a display of the Dead Sea Scrolls, you've seen what a dinner plate looked like in first century Israel. About that big was the dinner plate, because that's all one needed to hold a few olives, some nuts, and maybe a couple of vegetables. That was it. But at a wedding, people served platters, our dinner-size food, and it had things like meat and rice and bread, all of the things that people normally could not afford to have. And the wine flowed in abundance. Everyone was able to eat and drink more than usual as they danced and they talked and they relaxed with friends and neighbors. But running out of wine, that was an unexpected disaster. No one knew what to do. Now let's face it, we all expect some form of dysfunction at a wedding. Things happen. But then there are times when the dysfunction gets out of hand and the police show up. Well, this was as bad as the police having to show up today. Expect the unexpected. Well, no one expected this. Now, Jesus' mother heard about the problem, and she knew that this was just a social disaster for the bride and groom, so she took it upon herself to do the unexpected. She went to Jesus and let him know that the wine had run out. Now, Jesus did not expect this from his mother. In fact, he was pretty rude with her. Instead of saying, "Mother, Emma," he said, "Woman, what does this have to do with us?" As children are sometimes known to do when their mothers approach them to do things they're not ready to do. Then his mother did exactly what many mothers do. She demanded that Jesus do something by telling the servants to do whatever Jesus told them. Well, in John's Gospel, his mother knew that Jesus had a special connection with God, and she believed that he could solve the problem. She just didn't know how he was going to solve the problem, what he was going to do. But we can believe that she had confidence in his ability to solve this problem in some way. And we might believe that Mary thought Jesus, who was there with his first followers, would have passed the hat around all the guests and collected enough to send the stewards out to buy some more wine in town. It didn't have to be the good stuff, just enough to keep the party going. And we might believe that Mary thought Jesus could keep everyone calm, while the chief steward, the butler, arranged for more wine to be delivered. We might even believe that Mary thought that Jesus was capable of working miracles. And by the way, Mary's demand of Jesus is why our Roman Catholic sisters and brothers pray to Mary. She got results at the wedding in John's Gospel, so she can probably get results for us. Now, for most people, Jesus did something completely unexpected. He told the servants to fill 6 jars with water, 6 25-gallon jars with water, that's 6, and take them to the chief steward to taste. And the chief steward tasted the liquid in the jars and discovered they were filled with the best wine of the day. 150 gallons of really good wine. It was a party. That was completely unexpected. Well, life routinely drops things that are unexpected into our laps. Life drops all sorts of things, some things like illness or accidents or relationships that are falling apart, or maybe even relationships coming together. Life drops things like babies and new jobs, opportunities and gifts into our life. Life drops things into our lives that sometimes we expect, and more often than not, just do not expect. Sometimes we welcome the unexpected. More often than not, we just don't. And there are times when the unexpected doesn't disrupt our lives very much, and we find that we can have the grace and the calm and the skill to ride it out. And then other times, we discover that life has dumped everything upon us, and we don't have nearly enough grace, nearly enough calm, or nearly enough social skills to deal with it. And the longer it goes, the more we struggle to keep it together, the more we struggle to take a breath and calm ourselves, the more we struggle to find what we need to do to just take one step ahead of the other, until eventually we run out of time, we run out of patience, we run out of strength, and we run completely out of nice. And for most of us, once we have tried everything else, that's when we decide, well, we may as well turn to God. What could it hurt? We might as well turn to God. It might even help. Might not, but it might. Well, when life hands us something really big that is unexpected, most of us do our best to handle it, until we realize that the only place we can turn is God. The only place the guests at the wedding could turn to was Jesus. God's presence at the wedding. They had no doubt tried to think of everything else. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? And they finally remembered to turn to God. And maybe that's the gift of the unexpected. Because at some point, when the unexpected dumps in our laps, we all discover that we turn to God for help, or we turn to God with gratitude for the help. The unexpected forces all of us to realize just how much we need God. And the unexpected often completely disrupts our lives, but somewhere in the midst of the disruption, we all get to the end of the rope. There is no knot to hang on to. We do not have the kitty claws to hang on to the branch. We get to the end of everything, and in the midst of it, excuse me, we discover how much we need God, and we discover that we can thank God for being there. Life routinely drops the unexpected into our lives. And sometimes we welcome it as a gift from God. Other times it feels like an absolute curse upon us and those we care about. And either way, we ultimately end up turning to God. Now, in the game of Survivor, they're told to expect the unexpected. And through the course of the 39 days of living somewhere without enough food, without enough shelter, without things that we like to believe we can take for granted, Somewhere in the midst of all there, every survivor, every participant falls apart and either comes back together or doesn't. And when they come back together, they generally discover that they have more strength, more presence, more abilities in their life than they recognized they did. And the few who have got a connection with God in the church give that credit to God. They say, I've got more inside of me. I've got God giving me more than I thought I knew. And the others, well, those who don't know God are just saying, wow, that was a good experience for them. Hope I don't have to have it. And those of us who know God say, maybe someday they'll learn to say all of that calm, all of that courage, all of those abilities were given to them by a God that they ultimately had to turn to when they had nothing else. And maybe that's the gift, friends, because we're all participants in life. And sometimes life hands us the unexpected. And the more we try to figure it out ourselves, the more we realize how much we need God in our lives. Expect the unexpected. Who knew that that was going to lead us closer to God than we had ever been before? Amen.
Amen.